AITA for walking out when my wife announced our divorce at a fake surprise party. You think you know someone, right up until the day they decide to turn your marriage into public entertainment. That's when I understood two things. First, that nothing would ever be the same again. And second, that I only had one choice, and I made it. It all started on a Wednesday evening when she came home with an energy that was too cheerful to be natural. She had that look, the same one she got when she was planning something she thought was brilliant. "We have to go somewhere special on Saturday," she announced, practically bouncing with excitement. "I've organized something very important for us." I was sitting at the kitchen counter, checking some emails on my laptop. "What kind of thing?" I asked. "It's a surprise. Trust me on this one. We have to be at the Oak Ridge Event Center at 7 p.m. sharp." The way she said it gave me a pit in my stomach. Her tone sounded off, too rehearsed, as if she had practiced this conversation. But I just nodded. All right. Saturday came, and she spent the whole afternoon getting ready. Hair, makeup, the red dress she only wore for special occasions. She kept looking at herself in the mirror with that little smirk of satisfaction. "You look beautiful," I said as I got in the car. "Thanks. You look presentable, too." The drive to the event center was strange. She couldn't put her phone down. Text, send, back in the purse, out again, more texts. Every couple of minutes, she'd glance over at me, as if trying to guess my reaction. "So, what exactly are we attending here?" I asked as we parked. "You'll see. Just follow me." The Oak Ridge Event Center looked like one of those generic rental halls with beige carpeting and harsh fluorescent lights. As soon as we walked through the entrance, I heard voices and music coming from a side room. She led me by the arm, but it was more of a shove than an affectionate gesture. When we entered the large hall, I froze. There were at least 30 people there. Our friends, some of her colleagues, even her sister and her husband. They all turned toward us, and a heavy silence fell over the room. "Surprise," someone shouted, but it sounded hollow, as if they weren't sure what they were celebrating themselves. My wife pulled away from me and moved to the center of the room. She grabbed a microphone that had clearly been set up in advance, and suddenly, I understood. This wasn't a surprise party for me. It was a performance, and I was the unwanted spectator. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice echoing through the sound system. "I know some of you are wondering why I brought you here. So, I'll get straight to the point." The room grew even quieter. I could feel everyone's eyes shifting from her to me, and an icy chill shot through my chest. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about marriage, about relationships, about what we're really doing in all of this. She took a theatrical pause as if she were giving a TED Talk. "And I've come to a conclusion. This is it," I thought. "Marriage is a joke, an outdated institution designed to trap people in situations that no longer suit them. So tonight, I want to officially announce in front of you all that I am single again." The room erupted. Applause, cheers, as if she had just won an award. Her sister threw her arms up in the back of the room. A colleague yelled, "You go, girl." I stood motionless, watching this circus, and something inside me just switched off. It wasn't pain, it wasn't anger, it was total clarity. I finally saw her goal. She had orchestrated all of this to humiliate me publicly. She wanted me to beg, to cry, to break down, thus confirming the little story she had invented about our marriage. She turned to me with that expectant look, as if hoping I would get on my knees and plead for her to come back. The microphone still in her hand, ready to hand it over to me for some pathetic declaration of love. But no. I looked at her for 3 seconds, then glanced at the crowd, still applauding my humiliation. Then, I did the one thing she absolutely did not expect. I turned around and walked away. Not a word, not a tear, not a shout. Just my back turned and a walk to the exit that somehow felt like both the longest and shortest of my entire life. Behind me, the applause died down completely. I could still hear her voice, suddenly uncertain, calling my name into the microphone. But I didn't turn back. I didn't slow down. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove home, leaving her to explain to 30 bewildered people why her grand finale had just gone completely off script. I got home around 8:30 p.m. and poured myself a bourbon. Not because I was devastated, but because I had a lot to think about, and a good whiskey helps me think clearly. She didn't come home that night. She probably stayed at her sister's, hoping I would call to apologize for not playing the part she had written for me in her little play. My phone remained silent on the kitchen counter, and that was perfectly fine with me. Monday morning, I started making changes. First call, the bank, to remove her access to our joint accounts. Not out of revenge, just as a precaution. She wanted to be single? She could manage her finances like a single person. Second call, the insurance company, to remove her from my health coverage. Again, nothing personal, just a logical consequence. Single people have their own insurance. Third call, the locksmith. If she had announced to 30 people that she was single, then she no longer lived here. Simple logic. By noon, I had new locks on all the doors and a stack of her belongings neatly packed in boxes in the garage. I didn't throw anything away, didn't damage a thing. I simply organized it like you would help someone move out, because in reality, that's exactly what was happening. Around 2 p.m., the phone finally rang. Her name flashed on the screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Hello. Her voice was sharp, incredulous. Are you serious? You just left like that. Actually, I left your performance. There's a difference. It wasn't a performance. It was me being honest about how I feel. Honesty would have been a private conversation. What you did was a public humiliation designed to make me look pathetic. So, congratulations. Mission accomplished. A silence followed. She clearly didn't expect me to be so calm. Look, we need to talk. I'm coming home. No, you're not. What do you mean? You announced you were single. Single people don't live at my house. Our house. Check the deed. The house is mine. It always has been. You lived here because we were married. But according to your speech Saturday night, that's no longer the case. I heard her breathing quicken on the other end of the line. You can't just kick me out. This is my home, too. It was past tense. You made your choice in front of 30 witnesses. I'm just respecting that choice. You're being ridiculous. Me? I think announcing our divorce at a surprise party without even filing the papers was ridiculous. I'm just being practical. She hung up on me. I finished my coffee and went back to sorting her things. An hour later, she was knocking on the front door. I saw her through the window. She was still wearing the red dress from her big performance. But this time, she looked far less impeccable than she had at her grand premiere. I opened the door but stood in the doorway, not inviting her in. What is wrong with you? She snapped. Nothing. I'm actually doing great. Great. Yes. For the last few months, I was wondering why you seemed so unhappy, so distant. On Saturday, you cleared everything up. You don't want to be married to me? Message received. That's not what I meant. Really? Because marriage is a joke and I'm officially single seemed pretty clear. Was there a hidden meaning I missed? Her face turned red. I was just trying to prove a point. What point exactly? That you enjoy humiliating me in public? That our marriage means so little to you that you'd end it as a show for your friends? Explain it to me. I wanted you to fight for us, to show some emotion. I actually laughed at that. So your brilliant plan was to announce our divorce in public, wait for me to beg and make a scene, and then you would generously take me back in front of everyone? Was that your idea of romance? She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. I just needed to know you still cared about me. I did care. Past tense again. But you know the thing about respect? Once it's lost, it doesn't just come back because you explain why you threw it away. So that's it. You're going to give up on 8 years of marriage. I'm not giving up on anything. You're the one who gave up. I'm just going with the flow. She tried to push past me, but I didn't move from the doorway. Your things are in the garage. I'll leave it unlocked so you can get them whenever you want. But this isn't your home anymore. You can't be serious. Very serious. You wanted to be single. Congratulations. Enjoy your freedom. I closed and locked the door. She kept knocking for a good 10 minutes, yelling that I was being childish, that we needed to talk like adults, that I was overreacting. I went upstairs and took a long, hot shower. When I got out, the noise had stopped. Her car was no longer in front of the house. That night, she started sending me messages, endless texts full of paragraphs, saying she'd made a mistake, that she only wanted me to show I still cared, that we could get through this if I would just let her come home to explain. I read every message and deleted them without replying. If she wanted to be single so badly that she would announce it publicly, well, she was now going to find out what that really meant. Around 10 p.m., the phone rang again. This time, I answered immediately. What is it? Please, just talk to me. Let me explain. You had 8 years to explain how you felt. You chose to do it with a microphone in your hand in front of 30 people instead of talking to your husband. That already told me everything about how much you valued my feelings. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been respecting me enough to discuss your problems in private. Fair would have been not turning our marriage into a comedy routine for your friends. But you didn't want fairness, you wanted drama. Well, here's your drama. I hung up and turned off my phone. The house was silent that night, peaceful even. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without waking up wondering what I'd done wrong or how to fix what was broken between us. I realized the only thing that needed fixing was my tolerance for disrespect, and that was finally starting to heal. The next morning, the consequences she hadn't anticipated started to show up. I was drinking my coffee and reading the news when my phone started buzzing with messages from her colleagues who were at the party. Honestly, what she did to you on Saturday was hard to watch. Man, I was uncomfortable the whole time. Just wanted you to know that not everyone thought it was funny. Apparently, once the shock wore off and after some reflection, the mood had shifted. What had seemed like an act of female independence on Saturday night was, in the light of day, looking like gratuitous cruelty. At lunchtime, she came back to my house. This time with her sister, as moral support, a clear sign she was starting to get desperate. I opened the door, but didn't invite them in. "We need to talk," she said, trying to sound authoritative. "No, we don't." Her sister spoke up. "Come on, be reasonable." She made a mistake. Everyone makes them. I looked at her with genuine curiosity. Would you humiliate your husband in front of 30 people just to prove a point? That's not what she did. Oh no? I was there. I heard the speech, saw the applause. I'm pretty sure I know what happened. My wife took a step forward. "Look, I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. We can go to therapy, work on our problems." "Our problems? Which ones exactly? You know, you're distant, you don't communicate, you act like I don't matter." I gave a slight smile. "And your solution was to treat me like I don't matter in public, so blatantly that 30 people cheered when you announced it was over. Was that your idea of communication? I wanted to get your attention. Mission accomplished. You have my full attention now, and I'm paying very close attention to the fact that you decided our marriage was worth less than the applause of people who barely know us." Her sister tried again. She regrets it. She understands she crossed a line. Really? Because so far, I haven't heard a single apology, only justifications, rationalizations, but not one genuine "I'm sorry" for what she did. Her face turned scarlet. "Fine. Sorry. There, are you happy?" "Sorry for what exactly?" "For the party thing." "Oh, the party thing. Is that what we're calling it now? Not humiliating me in public, not announcing our divorce without telling me, not turning our marriage into entertainment? Just the party thing." She seemed frustrated, as if I was deliberately making things difficult. "What do you want me to say?" "Nothing. I don't want you to say anything. I want you to live with the consequences of your choices." "This is ridiculous. You're acting like a child." "Me?" "Because as far as I know, adults discuss their problems in private. Adults respect their partners enough not to expose them in public. Adults don't announce life-changing decisions in front of a crowd without consulting the person involved. So, between the two of us, who's acting like a child?" Her sister put an arm around her shoulders. "He's right, you know." My wife spun around to face her, shocked. "What? I told you on Friday this was a terrible idea. I warned you it would backfire, but you were so sure you knew what you were doing." "You knew about this?" I asked my sister-in-law. She called me on Friday, all excited about her plan. I told her it was cruel, but she said you'd understand once you saw she was serious about saving your marriage. I turned back to my wife. "So you planned this for days?" "It wasn't an impulsive outburst. You actually thought it through, invited people, rented a hall, and decided that humiliating me in public was the best strategy to save our relationship." She said nothing, and her silence was all the answer I needed. "That makes it even worse, you understand?" I said. If it had been a fit of anger, at least I could have understood it. But no, this was calculated. You decided that humiliating me was acceptable collateral damage to prove your point. I didn't think you would just leave. And what did you think I would do? Collapse on my knees and beg you not to leave me in front of everyone? Give you the exact power play you were hoping for? I thought you would fight for us. Fight for us. You announced in front of a room full of people that marriage was a joke and you were single. What was I supposed to be defending at that point? You had already insulted our entire relationship in public while I just stood there taking it. Her sister shook her head. I told you this would happen. I warned you he wouldn't put up with this kind of drama. Shut up, my wife snapped at her sister before turning back to me. Okay, you want an apology? I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. I'm sorry if I embarrassed you. I'm sorry I didn't handle it differently. There. Now can we move on? I stared at her for a long moment. You still don't get it. Get what? That this isn't about hurt feelings, it's about respect. You showed me exactly how much you respect me, how much you respect our marriage and our relationship. And there is no apology that can recover the respect you threw away. So what? You're just going to throw it all away like that, overnight? I'm not throwing anything away. I'm accepting reality. The reality that you valued our marriage so little you decided to make a public spectacle of it. The reality that you care more about theatrical gestures than honest conversations. The reality that you don't respect me enough to treat our problems as something private between us. I took a step back from the door. Your things are still in the garage. Take them whenever you want. But this conversation is over. Wait. She tried to step forward, but I was already closing the door. Don't make this harder than it has to be, I said through the glass. You made your choice on Saturday night. Now live with it. I walked away and heard them talking for a few more minutes in front of the house before a car door slammed, and she drove off. That afternoon, 3 more mutual friends texted me. Apparently, the story of what had really happened at the party was already making the rounds, and people were starting to take sides. The tide was turning, and not in her favor. That evening, she tried calling me 6 times. I didn't answer any of them. The woman who had announced she was single was discovering that single meant alone. And I was discovering that there are some bridges that, once burned in public, cannot be rebuilt with private apologies. On Wednesday, the social consequences became even clearer. I learned from mutual friends that those who had applauded her announcement were starting to reconsider what they had actually witnessed. One of her colleagues sent me a message in the afternoon. Honestly, what happened on Saturday doesn't sit right. It was brutal to watch. Another friend called me directly. Man, I can't get that scene out of my head. The more I think about it, the more absurd it seems. Did she really surprise you with that? Apparently, once the shock and awkwardness faded, people started talking, and the more they talked, the more they realized they had been complicit in something cruel. Nobody likes being used as an extra in someone else's drama. And that's exactly what she had done to them. Meanwhile, I started getting invitations I hadn't seen in months. Golf on Friday, drinks after work, dinner on the weekend. It was as if people who had been walking on eggshells around our marital problems finally felt free to talk to me directly without having to manage us as a package deal. Thursday morning, I ran into one of her college friends at the coffee shop near my office. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me, like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Hey, she said quietly. Morning. She hesitated, then walked closer. Look, I have to tell you something. What she did on Saturday was wrong. I've known her for 15 years, and I've never seen her be that cruel to anyone. Thanks for saying that. She keeps texting our friend group, trying to get us to convince you to talk to her, but honestly, most of us are disgusted. Nobody wants to get involved. That explained why her calls were tapering off. Her support network was crumbling because even her closest friends couldn't defend what she had done. Friday night, I went out for a drink with some colleagues. We ended up at a sports bar downtown, watching the game and just talking. For the first time in months, I wasn't worried about getting home at a certain time or dealing with a manufactured crisis. Around 10:30 p.m., guess who walked in, flanked by her sister and 2 other friends. She saw me immediately and came straight to our table. Can we talk? She asked, completely ignoring my colleagues. We're watching the game. I glanced at the guys, who were watching the awkward scene unfold. One of them spoke up. You must be the wife. The story of what you did is all over the office. That was harsh. Her face turned scarlet. Don't do this here. Do what? Tell the truth? I thought you loved public announcements. She looked around the table, seeing 4 men staring at her like she was toxic. This is ridiculous. Ridiculous? You're the one following me to a bar to continue a conversation that you yourself ended on Saturday. You said you were single. Single people don't track down their ex-husbands at sports bars. Her sister came over and grabbed her arm. Come on, let it go. But she pulled away. I'm not giving up on us. There is no us anymore. You made that perfectly clear in front of 30 people on Saturday. Were you lying then, or are you lying now? I wasn't lying. I just wanted you to listen to me. Mission accomplished. You have my full attention. The message came through crystal clear. She stood frozen for a few seconds, realizing everyone at the table was looking at her with a mix of pity and disapproval. Her grand gesture had backfired so badly that even strangers were judging her. Fine, she finally said. But this isn't over. Yes, it is. She stormed off, followed by her sister. My colleagues were silent for a moment. Then one of them burst out laughing. Damn, man, she really thought humiliating you in public would make you chase after her. That's a level of messed up I've never seen before. The weekend was quiet. I completely cleaned out the garage, took care of things I'd been putting off, and finally enjoyed my home without walking on eggshells. No drama, no manufactured crises, no emotional manipulation disguised as communication. On Sunday afternoon, her best friend from high school showed up at my door. It surprised me because she had always been polite but distant with me. Now, she seemed genuinely upset. I need to apologize to you, she said before I could even greet her. Why? For not speaking up on Saturday, for letting it happen, for clapping when I should have walked out. I leaned against the doorframe. Why didn't you walk out? Because I was in shock. It happened too fast, and I didn't want to make a scene. She shook her head. But mostly because she'd been complaining about your marriage for months, and I thought maybe she had a point. Now I see she was painting a picture that wasn't real. What she said about you, the way she described your relationship, it doesn't match what I saw on Saturday. And what did you see on Saturday? A woman humiliating a man who clearly loved her. A woman so hungry for attention and control that she preferred to destroy her own marriage in public just to prove a point. She looked ashamed, and I enabled her. But she made her choice. You were just the consequence of her actions. She paused. She's falling apart. No one wants to be around her. She spends all her time calling, texting, showing up at people's houses, trying to convince us to help her put the pieces back together. But there's nothing to put back. She broke something irreparable. Exactly, another voice said. It was her husband. She thought you'd come running back. She was certain you would beg. When you just left, I think that's when she realized she had made a terrible miscalculation. After they left, I sat on the porch with a beer and thought about how quickly everything had changed. A week ago, I was married to a woman who despised me enough to turn our problems into a spectacle. Now, I was free from that toxicity, and even her closest friends admitted she had crossed the line. Sometimes, the best response to someone trying to humiliate you is to simply refuse the humiliation. Just leave them there with their microphone and their crowd, talking into the void while you walk away with your dignity intact. The people who are worth it will respect you for it. The ones who don't were never worth it in the first place. The second week after the announcement, desperation set in. She started showing up everywhere I went, as if she were tracking my movements. On Monday morning, she was waiting by my car in the work parking lot. I walked past her and got in without a glance. She knocked on the window, talking through the glass about needing to work through our problems. I started the car and drove away while she was still talking. On Tuesday, she appeared at the supermarket while I was grocery shopping, following me down the cereal aisle, talking at my back about couples therapy and second chances. I finished my shopping and left her standing there between the boxes. On Wednesday, she tried a new strategy, using other people as messengers. Her mother called me to try to guilt-trip me for destroying the family. Her brother texted, offering to get coffee and talk like adults. Even my own mother got a tearful phone call from her, saying she'd made a mistake and just wanted to come home. I gave everyone the same answer. She made her choice in public, and I was just respecting that choice. On Thursday night, I was at the gym when she showed up. She had never worked out a single day in our entire marriage, but there she was in brand new gear, pretending to use the elliptical while staring at me. I finished my workout and headed to the locker room. She followed me to the door of the men's room and just stood there. The staff had to ask her to leave. On Friday, she reached the peak of her campaign. She sent flowers to my office with a scrawled card, "I'm sorry," in childish handwriting. Then, she had a singing telegram delivered in the middle of a business lunch. A woman in costume belted out a song about forgiveness while my client stared, dumbfounded. I just said thank you, tipped the performer $20, and resumed the meeting as if nothing had happened. Later, my client told me he was impressed with how I handled the situation. He even added that it showed character under pressure. Over the weekend, she moved on to pure manipulation. She started posting on social media about feeling low and lonely, hoping to garner sympathy and have someone pressure me into taking her back. When that didn't work, she shared old photos of us with captions about the good times and fighting for love. I didn't see any of it. I had blocked all her accounts the day after her single and ready to mingle announcement. Friends told me about it. On Sunday night, she tried the nuclear option. She called feigning an emergency, crying hysterically, saying she was in danger and needed help. When I didn't rush over, her sister relayed the same story. I drove to her sister's house, not out of concern, but to see how low she would go. She was the one who answered the door, perfectly fine. No emergency, just puffy eyes and a desperate look. "You came," she said, as if that proved something. "Your sister said you were in danger, but clearly, you're not." "I'm leaving." "Wait, please. I just wanted to talk to you face to face, without interruptions." "So you faked an emergency. Is that your idea of mature communication?" I was desperate. "You won't answer my calls. You refuse to see me. You're acting like I don't exist. You announced you were single. Single people aren't entitled to the attention of their ex-husbands." I made a mistake. "No. You made a choice. You planned, organized, and executed it. The only mistake was thinking I would participate in your drama." She grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. "I can't sleep. I can't eat. I can't focus on anything. I miss you so much, it's killing me." I looked at her hand clenched on my arm, then at her face. "That's called a consequence. You'll get used to it. How can you be so cold? We had 8 years of marriage, and you threw those 8 years away in exchange for the applause of people who barely know us. You chose the crowd over your husband. Now live with that choice." I pulled my arm free and walked back to my car. She followed me, still talking, pleading, trying to negotiate her way out of the hole she had dug for herself. As I drove away, I saw her in the rearview mirror, standing alone in her sister's driveway, finally understanding that some bridges, once burned in front of 30 witnesses, can't be rebuilt with private apologies. The woman who wanted so much drama had exactly what she asked for. The problem was, she was now the sole audience for her own show. A month after her grand announcement, I was having the best evening I'd had in years. I had grilled a perfect steak, opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving, and was watching the playoffs in absolute peace. Around 9:30 p.m., the rain started. Not just a drizzle, but a real downpour that makes you grateful to be warm and dry at home. That's when I heard it, a soft knock on the front door, almost drowned out by the storm. I looked through the window, and there she was, soaked, with no umbrella, no coat, standing on the porch in a t-shirt and jeans plastered to her body. Her hair was matted, mascara running down her cheeks, looking like someone who had been waiting for a long time. She knocked again, this time more desperately. I stood still at the window, watching her through the glass. She looked up and saw me there. She pressed her palm against the pane as if trying to reach through it. "Please," I could hear her say even through the window. "Please, let me in. We need to talk." I stood there for a long time, taking in the whole scene. This was the same woman who, 1 month earlier, had stood before 30 people, microphone in hand, to declare that marriage was a joke and she was single again. The same woman who had planned this humiliation for days, invited an audience to witness it, and expected me to get on my knees and beg for her forgiveness. Now, she was the one begging in the rain. The irony was perfect, but I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not revenge, not a desire to crush her further. Just an emptiness where feelings for her used to be. She knocked harder, now in full desperation. "I know you're there. I can see you. Please. Just 5 minutes. 5 minutes. That's all she was asking for now. 5 minutes to try to erase a month of consequences for 8 seconds of public humiliation. I stepped away from the window and went back to the couch. I picked up my wine glass and took a sip. The steak was getting cold, but it was still perfect. The knocking continued for another 10 minutes. Sometimes soft and pleading, sometimes desperate and demanding. I could hear her voice, muffled by the rain and the walls, but I didn't bother trying to make out the words. Then finally, the noise stopped. I looked out the window again and saw her sitting on the steps, huddled over, her head in her hands as the rain fell on her relentlessly. Part of me wondered how long she would stay there. Another part wondered if this wasn't just another performance, a final act to try to make me feel guilty enough to open the door. But the biggest part of me just felt tired. Tired of the drama, of the manipulation, of being treated like an extra in the story she had invented about her emancipation and independence. That night at the event center, she had made her choice. She had chosen the audience over her husband, applause over respect, public humiliation over a private conversation, and every consequence since then was just the natural result of that choice. I finished my wine and went upstairs. Through the window, I could still see her, sitting in the rain like a tragic heroine waiting for her redemption scene. But this wasn't a movie, it was real life. And in real life, actions have consequences. Some mistakes can't be fixed with tears in a storm. I drew the curtains and went to sleep. The next morning, she was gone. On the doorstep, soaked by the rain, was a piece of paper, probably a letter written while she waited. I threw it in the trash without reading it. 3 months later, I heard from mutual friends that she had moved to another state. She had started over somewhere else, far from the social circle that had witnessed her disaster. I never saw her again. Sometimes people ask if I regret the way I handled things. If I should have given her another chance, shown some mercy, been the bigger person. But respect isn't something you lose and then get back with an apology. Trust isn't something you shatter in public and try to patch up in private. Dignity isn't something you trade for applause and hope to salvage with tears. She wanted to be single so badly, she made a public celebration out of it. I just gave her exactly what she asked for. Our story was over. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.